You are listening to the SuperfreakMedia podcast network. If you like this podcast, please be sure to show your support and follow us on our other social media platforms. Check out the links listed in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the SuperfreakMedia podcast No Ghouls Allowed with me, your host, Jonno Butler. Joining me on this, the 19th episode of the podcast, which I've just been reliably informed by Liam. We've got Liam Banks.
Hey, I'm here again.
Oh, he's back. Charlie Clark.
Hello.
And Dan Poppet.
Hello.
Hello. In today's episode, we are going to be talking horror icons. I can't believe we've got to 19 episodes without talking about icons of horror. I don't know how we've managed it. Liam reminded us of it, and now we're doing it. We're also going to have a classic foreign bodies section from Liam Banks himself, and also a Game Over Man section from Dan and Charlie. But first, I believe that, I'm going to be playing the Richard Parker role here, so I haven't seen this film. As Charlie said, I have been listening to audiobooks this month. They've been to see the new Candyman film.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, guys?
I think I should let you guys kick it off, because I think your outlook is going to be a lot more positive than mine.
Oh, hello.
But
Oh, don't
spicy,
make me type
spicy.
you on this. Do you want you kick off?
I'm going to be probably more melodramatic than Liam is going to be, and say I think that was probably one of the best horror style films I've seen in a long time cinematically. Just being in that cinema, just every shot, every sort of sound cue, just everything made me so happy watching it as a very strong fan of the original. And even some of the one of the sequels, let's say, just everything about it made me so happy.
It was, I'm so glad we went to go and see it. And I am very, very excited to see more of DaCosta's work, because that was, I loved it. And I feel now like we've praised the hell out of it and said how much we love it. Liam is going to shit on that and tell us how much he hated it.
No, I do see the positives as well. Like you said, Dan, I'm a huge fan of the original. It was nice to see such a big player of horror kind of return to cinema, and I'm really glad that they held out, as opposed to doing the online streaming that a lot of films have gone with over the last year due to COVID. They were like, no, this needs to be seen in a cinema, and I do agree. I think it was shot beautifully. The paper puppet sequences were just gorgeous to watch, even though they were depicting really gruesome stuff. And I do think it retained some of the DNA, obviously, of the original. It's very much obviously commenting on racism and the gentrification of certain places, particularly in America, and that injustice of all of that. So it did retain that. I don't know. The opening part, I'd probably say third, I thought was phenomenal. And I was like, yes, this is it. I'm so invested. But then I just really felt like it slowed and waned quite a bit. And then you got the ending, which I will say as well was a decent ending. Obviously, there's a nice closing kind of image and dialogue and everything there, not giving it away. But I just felt it was very sudden. And I wish we'd have kind of basked in that ending a little bit more than the lead up to it. It didn't shock me. The twists that were throughout it, I didn't really feel like it was something I didn't expect.
I get that, but I think I don't know, like the twist for me, although like I kind of felt the same in the fact that like for me personally, there wasn't anything in it that I don't think like, because me and Dan went to watch it together. There were a couple of things where we leaned over and went, oh, that's da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like full of surprises. I just think it was executed flawlessly, in my opinion. I think everything that it set out to do, it achieved. I feel like the performances were brilliant. I thought the writing was brilliant. I didn't necessarily feel the same pacing issue as you did, but I can kind of see what you mean, Liam, in the sense that like that, you know, that middle act is kind of, you know, where it's just kind of stuff's building up. And I guess it does slow the pace down, but I didn't feel that that was like a bad thing. I really enjoyed like seeing it. I really, really enjoyed it.
There was a lot of times though, where it was that thing where we sort of lean over and sort of say something. A lot of the times though, it was the same thing that we kind of did with, when we watched The Haunting of Hill House, where little things had happened where they weren't this big dramatic. There wasn't this big spike in the score. There wasn't this dramatic zoom in moment. It was just something creepy that happened that was subtle, and it was so refreshing with sort of the recent jump scares. Everything must be in the forefront to be scary. And I think it sort of felt like a nice throwback to like the original Candyman with the subtlety.
Yeah, it was nice that it kind of made you look at horrible moments. Like it didn't jump to them and then jump away. It was just like, you are going to look at this horror. Yeah. And I think that's maybe possibly because of the political message that the film carries as well. It was just like, you're going to look at this. You're going to take a good long look at this, and we're not cutting away, because in reality it is a piece of social commentary as well as a horror. We don't get to look away from the racism in the world. Well, some people try to, but you know, the humans among us don't look away from the racism in the world. And I think in that sense it very much achieved what it set out to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, like I said, I don't think it was a bad film by any stretch. I think I did have really high expectations for it. I think mainly because maybe it had been held off for so long and I'd kind of seen all the promo stuff. And I mean, I think I was surprised overall at how much it actually referenced the original. I wasn't expecting there to be references to Helen Lyle and obviously the twists and the threads and things that were kind of pulled through from that original story. So it was nice to see that.
What I liked is it didn't feel cheesy in the sense that, you know, when sometimes like they drop things in for obvious fan service, it was fan service without it being like cheesy fan service. It was just there going, oh, Helen Lyle. Oh, we'll just drop this little thread in for you. And it was just done beautifully. Like it was pitched perfectly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's, again, we spoke in the last episode about how horror has kind of in many ways saved cinema. And I mean, I believe this film broke records for a director of color, a female director, and horror in like general, like blockbuster sales, all of that, especially since the pandemic. So that to me is always going to be a win-win. And I think, I feel like it's going to be a film that fits into the canon of Candyman and will slowly evolve into more of a cult favorite. I think I was just a bit on the fence about it on first viewing, and so I might need to go back to it. But yeah.
I think if nothing else, the score should get all the awards.
Oh, the score was beautiful.
Well,
the score was incredible.
It took what Philip Glass did in the original, and it kind of just made it current, but didn't deviate too much from it. Like it still very much felt as, I don't know. I love that score, and that always reminds me as well of they used it in a scene in American Horror Story Asylum as well, when Lana's escaping the asylum. And I just think it's a fantastic bit of music. And I think horror soundtracks in general don't get enough kind of praise because they're probably a soundtrack that needs to do a hell of a lot more than most like film scores.
Yeah.
I think in action films sometimes. A lot of horror films, there's less dialogue than most other films. So the score does a lot of your work for you. Absolutely. And as you said, Dan, with the cues, it lets you know when maybe you need to be a bit tense. But this didn't have, like you said, that piercing interruption to scare you with sound as opposed to seeing something that was scary. So, I appreciate there was a lot of good elements to it. So I think I left a bit confused as to why I was a bit like, oh, okay. But hey ho, I don't know.
So in essence then, two kind of very not polar opposite opinions of the film, but
no,
maybe I think for you, Liam, it was built up so much with the delays and everything that it could never live up to your kind of own hype, I guess. And I think that's probably going to be a problem with quite a few films that have been delayed. I know it's not a horror film, but I've been looking forward to the new James Bond film for a long time. I've been looking forward to the new Top Gun for a long time. And it's I can't help but think when I finally do get to see them, I'll just go, oh.
I think that was it. There's a lot of stuff in the trailers because I think Candyman had like several trailers, and I'm one of these people who will watch a trailer and study it almost. And there was so many elements of it that were in the film, obviously, but I think in actual fact, I probably ruined it for myself because like the bathroom sequence, for example, I'd already seen before I'd gone into it. And I think if I'd have seen that straight up just in the cinema, I'd have been like, God, that was amazing. But I'd already seen it like on a small screen on my laptop. And I don't know, I feel like it'll be the same for Bond, unfortunately. I've seen like the 8th trailer they've released, but there's only so much they can do to kind of keep that hype bubbling away, isn't there?
That's it, isn't it?
I think it's like they've had to almost do extra trailers simply because of all the delays. It's like they've had to give more away of the film in order to keep an audience like actually wanting to go back into a cinema after obviously the pandemic and all the lockdowns and stuff. So in a sense, they're doing themselves out of surprising their audiences, but I don't know. I've still got big hopes, especially for Bond, which Jonno mentioned. I'm very excited.
The thing is, there are silver linings with the fact that a lot more films that may have been a bit later on in the time frame are now closer, i.e. Malignant,
which is out now.
Has anyone seen that yet? Have you?
We're going to see it next week.
Okay. So I think that's definitely one to talk about at some point. I think you're either going to love it or you'll hate it. It's very, it's very much
polarizing.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of films that get us back into the cinema, Liam, your horror icon for this month's segment, I assume is an icon that repeatedly gets people back to the cinema. If it's a horror icon, it's got that sort of gravitas to it. Who have you chosen?
Well, it'll probably come to no surprise to the people listening. The horror icon that I've chosen is none other than Freddy Krueger. I mean, can you imagine? No, it's Michael Myers. It was always going to be Michael Myers.
You're so fine. I was going to do Michael Myers. I had no intention of doing Freddy Krueger.
You're going to have to cobble it together, Charlie, quick.
Quick to Google. But yeah, so I'm talking about the one, the only, the icon, the legend, Michael Myers.
Austin Powers, yeah?
Austin Powers, yeah. Do you know what? That is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. You know, when people call Michael Myers Mike Myers, I'm like, no, sit yourself down. It just bothers me so much. But yeah.
About Mike Myers, yeah?
I will mute you, Charlie. I will find a way. But yeah, so Michael Myers, or The Shape, as he's kind of come to be known through the series, is the star of the Halloween franchise that started back in 1978. Started with, obviously, John Carpenter's, I'd argue, like, seminal horror classic. I think there's a lot of reasons why you could call and it said Michael Jackson an icon, Michael Myers an icon.
I mean, Michael Jackson is an icon, but just of a different kind.
Different kind of icon. But yeah, I think it is very evident that there's still a want from fans for more energy and films in this franchise. I mean, we've got Halloween Kills, which I believe we're recording this today on the 15th of September. So it's literally a month. Not that I'm counting, but literally a month until I can get to see this film.
I'm excited.
But that was a film that was delayed due to the pandemic. Like, they'd filmed it, they'd edited it, it was done, it was ready to go for last Halloween. But they decided again, let's go theatrical one with it. And I'm glad that they did, although they've kind of 180'd and they're streaming it same day on Peacock in America, which I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that affects its performance. but I don't know, the series as a whole, obviously Michael Myers is the killer, the babysitter killer that is this like common figure throughout all of the films apart from Halloween 3. But that's, again, it's a very unique franchise in the fact we started off with Halloween in 78 and then we got the sequel Halloween 2, which was a direct follow-up. And Laurie Strode has the worst wig probably in movie history in that film, but we forgive and forget. But then it was developed into almost like an anthology. Halloween 3, they went in a completely different direction with it. And it was about like killer Halloween masks. And I think the idea was, we'd get a different tale every Halloween. But the fans were like, no, we want Michael Myers back. So in the middle, 4, 5, and 6, I kind of call it the saga of Jamie, which is supposed to be Laurie's long lost daughter. There's kind of, it goes in a weird way. They start talking about cults and the fact that there's like a pagan link to Halloween, and there's this reason why Michael Myers is evil. And then that was retconned back in 98 when Jamie Lee Curtis took it upon herself to get Halloween H2O produced. And then we went to Halloween Resurrection, which features Busta Rhymes doing Kung Fu and the scariest acting I've ever seen from Tyra Banks. So I'm not going to say it's a film franchise that is perfect because it's really not. But then Halloween 2018 comes along and retcons the whole thing. It is like, no, we're just going to do a sequel to the original film. And now we've got 2 more on the way with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. I'm not going to talk about Rob Zombie's remakes because no. I'm not the biggest fan. I like the brutality, but I feel like we're getting that with Halloween Kills, hopefully. So it might be a nice mix.
I don't think that the first Rob Zombie reimagining was the worst.
I think it tried to explain too much.
Yeah, I thought like the first time I watched it and I saw like the young Michael basically pick up what was an entire tree and cave a kid's head in with it. Spoiler alert. It was shocking to watch, to see that, because I don't know, like child violence in films, in horror films, even though it's done, like we think Battle Royale being probably the peak of child violence in a horror film, but like it really shocked me, like, and yeah, I think it does over explain it, especially like on a second watch, like you just like, oh, you're just giving away too much now. Yeah. The second Rob Zombie one, however, is utter garbage, and I've still not watched it all the way through. I think I got 25 minutes in and just went, this is just bollocks. Like, this is not scary.
It is trash.
Anything with it. It's just rain. All I got was rain and cars and rain. And I just got bored and turned it off.
As soon as Sherry Moon Zombie is turning up with a white horse, you're tapping out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I will say I give respect where it's due. Like, he wasn't trying to echo the original, because the original, in actual fact, it's an exercise in suspense. I mean, there's hardly any gore in that original film. It's about the fact that this figure is in the shadows. He's stalking these young adults, and it's not necessarily about that. And I mean, we open with that iconic opening with the Steadicam shot of him like brutally killing his sister. And then it is revealed he's this little boy. And I think, yeah, you're right, Charlie. That sort of stuff does stay with you, I think, a lot more, especially if it is like an evil kid. But I don't know, it was scarier for you to fill in the blanks and think, why is this kid snapped? Because on the face of it, he should just be this cute little boy getting on with his life, and he isn't. He's the devil.
He murdered his sister. He is evil.
Yeah. But I don't know. I still think it's a film that stands up as strong today as it did back then. I mean, we went to go and see it, Charlie, didn't we, on the anniversary screening? And I mean, that was, it's 43 years old now, which is insane. Like, absolutely
but
insane.
I think like when we went to watch it, it was like you could feel the tension in the room still, and like you could tell every single person in that room was obviously a massive fan, has obviously seen it countless times, and we were all sat there clutching our popcorn going, oh my god, but we knew what was going to happen. And I think it, like you say, it does stand up from all those years ago. I can still watch it and enjoy it. There's still bits that still make me jump when I watch it. And I think that's just testament to John Carpenter being an absolute genius.
I think that's the thing with it, isn't it? It's a bit like when we spoke about Jaws the other month. The fact that it doesn't rely on big jump scares. It doesn't rely on it's not. It's very much an exercise in suspense. The first film's kind of probably owes more to Hitchcock than it does. The other way around, like the later kind of slashier ones, for want of a better word. And I think if they'd have gone down the horrendous gore route for the first film, then we wouldn't be talking about it with the same reverence today. And I completely agree. But then at the same time, it was responsible for inspiring so much, obviously, from them. I mean, some of the other icons that we're going to mention in this episode, I think will also owe a lot to Halloween as a film coming out and being as successful as it was, because like with anything, like with Jaws even, then come the imitations, and some of them are great. Some of them then spawn their own franchises, which are equally as successful, but some of them just provide pure entertainment for us when they're just absolutely awful. So that's a great way to kick us off then, kind of like the almost like the granddaddy of the modern slasher film. Dan, we're going to move on to you now for your horror icon. What are you brought to the table?
So to go from one monstrous slasher killer to another, I have picked the one, the only Mr. Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. And I know there's going to be somebody screaming somewhere that, yes, he was not the original killer. That was Miss Pamela Voorhees. However, you think Friday the 13th, you immediately think Jason. And the thing is with Jason, he's just one of those killers that could just, you can put him in a very serious scenario and it will be entertaining. You can put him in the campest scenario ever and it will still be entertaining. To start with, obviously, he first appeared in Friday the 13th Part 2, where he didn't even support his trademark hockey mask. That wasn't until Part 3. He's visited Manhattan, he's gone to hell, he's been in space, he's even faced off against another massive horror icon, which obviously will maybe be spoken about later.
I don't know who that is.
No idea at all. And even like Michael, he has received the remake treatment, and the remake of Friday the 13th, after having quite a recent rewatch, I will attest is probably the most terrifying Jason has ever been. Because he's not this slow walking man that just randomly appears to stab horny teenagers. He's this machine of murder. He's got underground tunnels. He's laying traps, and it's genuinely terrifying. Like me and Charlie spoke about the first sequence. By the way, if you haven't watched the Friday the 13th remake, do give it a watch. It is quite entertaining. The first sequence where he's hunting that small group of people is absolutely terrifying. The kills, the way he moves, the ferocity of it is just something to behold. And well, first time you watch it will probably leave you aghast if you're used to watching the Jason from the 80s classics.
I can remember when that trailer dropped for the remake. And I mean, obviously, he fully got the Dawn of the Dead 28 Days Later treatment of the zombies. And I can remember horror fans everywhere absolutely losing their shit when he runs at the end of that trailer, where he runs with the machete and it just cuts to black.
Yeah.
And I mean, that opening sequence is essentially the first 2-3 films kind of condensed into one little short film, which is terrifying. It's amazing.
I remember going to see the remake on Friday the 13th in 2009.
Wait, what?
And So when it came out, it was Friday the 13th. They launched it on Friday the 13th. They released it in cinemas, and I went to watch it. And I remember audible gasps and screams, and not just like one random person in the audience going, oh, when he runs.
Yeah.
Literally, the entire audience were either going or screaming at him running, because it's like a completely different breed of Jason. I mean, the Jason in the originals is great, and I think he's almost got that Michael Myers element. And I think, like you were saying, Liam, Michael Myers paved the way for many other like horror villains. And I think he has that kind of slow moving, walking, ambling kind of Michael Myers-esque body movement. But then in the remake, it's just like, now scrap that. We're going to make him a hunter. Like, he's going to hunt the teenagers. He is going to trap them and kill them in horrible, horrible ways.
I would argue, I think he's the scariest out of all of the killers. Like, I mean, obviously Michael's my boy, but 100%, if Jason was running towards me, I'd just give up. Out of any of them, I'd just be like, okay, just take me now. It's fine. This has been good.
Yeah. There's sort of, I think with Michael, you pin that down to that is just a serial killer mind. With Jason, though, it's almost animalistic. There's no ever sense of reasoning. The only chance you have is if you are lucky enough to look like his mother, and even then, that's a very slim chance. But before even the remake, we're basically just talking the remake up at this point. Before that, all we had was maybe the slightest bit in, I'd say, Jason X, with the simulation where he gets the new suit with nanobots or something. It's very confusing.
That film.
It's a hybrid of Friday the 13th and a space film.
I can remember I had to study that at media studies when I was at college, because it was like, I think it was genre hybrid, and the example was Jason X. And I don't know, I don't think I've rewatched it since then.
I got Alien as an example for my hybrid genre study.
I wish I had Alien, because I mean, Alien, Jason X.
Obviously, Jason X is a step above.
Yeah,
I will say the liquid nitrogen death is kind of iconic.
And I think that's one thing that the Friday the 13th series does have, is the kind of the iconic kills, the iconic deaths. And I think that's something that, I mean, I think I'm probably quite safe in assuming what Charlie's choice is going to be, but we can say that all three of your choices have, and that is a selection of kind of iconic moments, iconic kills.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say so. And just going back to part 3, Dan, we obviously spoke about soundtracks earlier. The soundtrack for part 3 is just disco heaven. It is absolutely ridiculous how good it is.
There's a point where you could put it on in, say, like over something like Saturday Night Fever or Flashdance, and nobody would bat an eyelid.
It shouldn't be there. It's such a random, like.
It's incredible.
Maybe they sent the wrong tape to the composer. Well, they just sent the wrong reel of film.
That would be
watched Saturday Night Fever and then went, "Yep, I know what I'm doing."
See, that would be a good excuse. However, you get to Jason Lives Part 6, and what happens? It's the exact same thing again.
True.
I mean, it's definitely a franchise that had to evolve, isn't it? I mean, I think it's one of the most prevalent franchises. Like I don't know, until the recent like legal battle, which I think's halted everything. I don't think there would have been a reason why we didn't get more Jason. So hopefully that will get resolved, and we'll have more on the way. Because I'd personally like to see it.
Oh, of course.
So that means we are exactly halfway through our horror icons section. So I think this is a good time to have a little break, but not a break from Dan and Charlie, because we're going to go over to the Game Over Man segment, in which they're going to endow us with a horror game. Endow, is that the right word? Probably, I'll use it.
Endow?
No.
Well endowed.
Well endowed. Stunning.
Wow.
With a horror game of their choice this month. Over to you guys.
Game over.
Okay, thanks, Jonno. So we are going to talk our horror recommendation games for this month. I'm going to kick us off. And I am going to recommend, speaking of horror icons, we recently purchased a game called Horrified, which features all of the Universal horror icons. It's a board game, so we're kicking off with a board game this month. It's not like a single player game in the fact that you play for yourself. You have to work as a team. I think you can play with up to 5 people, I think. I'm pretty sure it's up to 5 people. But yeah, you basically you can put between 1 and 3 monsters on the board from, there's the Invisible Man, the Bride of Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolf Man, there's Dracula, there's the Mummy, and I think that's it. Am I missing someone?
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And you can pick any any combination of those from 1 monster, 2 monsters, and 3 monsters on the board. Obviously, the more monsters you have, the harder it gets. It's a lot of fun. It's puzzle solving. Each monster comes with their own puzzle. Like I said, you work as a team, and it's just a lot of fun. We've played through twice now, once with 2 monsters and once with 3. And every time it's different. It's the possibilities with the game are endless. So if you're a big fan of board games and you're a big fan of the Universal monsters, I would highly recommend picking up Horrified. If you have the money, maybe give yourself a payday treat.
And I'm going to talk about a video game again. And funnily enough, I've picked the Friday the 13th video game. So this released back in 2015, I believe. And you can get it on most major platforms, PlayStation 4, Xbox One. You can even get it on the Nintendo Switch and PC. And this is primarily a multiplayer game where one player will take control of Jason and the other players take control of camp counselors. And Jason's job is obviously to try and kill all the counselors, and the counselor's job is to escape. Now, unfortunately, like Liam said, there's quite a big lawsuit around Friday the 13th at the minute, so there's not a lot of updates as there were. But in its primary state, it's still very packed full of content. There's practically every Jason from the franchise, bar the remake, you can unlock as a skin. There's camp counselors for most of the films. It is packed with content. So if you're a fan of the franchise, I highly recommend downloading it. And it probably goes for quite cheap now, I'd imagine.
Thanks, guys. I'm really intrigued by this Horrified game. I'm just Googling it now.
Oh, it's so good. Honestly, when we have a Super Freak Games night, which we will have very soon, we had one in the calendar and then for various reasons it got cancelled. But we will have one. And yeah, when you guys come over for game night, we're busting it out because it's absolutely amazing. We've had so much fun playing it.
Oh, it looks really good. I've just found it on Amazon. Oh, that's not
Yeah,
too
it
bad.
just looks
cool.
legit. It does look very, very good.
It's got little characters. Very cool.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I think that would be one of the main reasons I'd get it, because I'd just put them out as like action figures.
they're little twee little things, but they're so cute. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. Like I said, when you guys come over for game night, we're busting it out. That'll be the first game we'll play.
Oh, totally. That and Betrayal at House on the Hill. We'll get that round as well. That is.
Oh my god, yeah!
Wonderful.
Please bring that. Yeah, you need to bring that over.
Yeah, my maybe potentially not knockoff version of that, but we'll see. I'm not entirely sure. It was weirdly cheap. That's all I can say. And the Friday the 13th game, am I thinking that it's extremely similar in a way to what's the game called? The one where somebody takes on the role of the killer. But there's no sort of license.
Am I going to write and say Dead by Daylight?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Is it sort of a similar sort of concept to that?
Kind of, yes. Friday the 13th, obviously its own sort of, it can only really stick to its franchise. And if you are intrigued by Friday the 13th, I do recommend Dead by Daylight. Because they've got so many franchises attached to it now. There's Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and those are just to name a few. So, yeah, if either of those interest you, buy into them genuinely, because games like that need funding to show that horror games are what we want.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sweet. Back to the horror icons, and I guess it's my turn. And you'll be all pleased to know that I've written a small essay, which I'm going to read out in full for you all. So strap in, basically. Enjoy. So when it comes to icons of horror, Charlie, you can keep your Freddys. Just saying.
Rude.
You can keep your Jasons. You can keep your Michael Myers because
Can we mute Jonno?
Yeah, like, what the hell is this?
it's more like a pitch. I'm not going to lie.
Personal.
I'm not going to lie. Because there's one that stands out for me more than all the rest. He's featured in countless movies, TV shows, stage adaptations. Versions of his story have been adapted and translated into languages from around the globe. In fact, only Sherlock Holmes is featured in more films than this guy. That's not to mention all the popular culture that he's been the inspiration for. I am, of course, talking about Dracula.
Oh.
So
that was nicely done.
Yeah. What are you saying?
that was a sexy intro. I like that. Well done, Jonno.
It's all right.
I need a minute.
First paragraph of 54.
Oh, God.
No, it's not. Don't worry, guys. So let's not get it wrong. Vampires didn't start with Dracula. They have their origins in folktales from all over the world, which is part of the reason why they and he are so enduring. So let's go back to the beginning. The character is the brainchild of Bram Stoker and first appeared in the novel Dracula, which was published in 1897. In fact, Bram began writing the novel after he heard news of the notorious serial killer Jack the Ripper. Another oft-cited inspiration for the character is, of course, Vlad Dracul, or Vlad the Impaler, who, you guessed it, was famed for impaling enemies as a form of torture, but weirdly enough, has never been linked to vampirism. Bram Stoker didn't link it to that, and in Bram Stoker's own notes, he makes no reference to Vladdy Boy whatsoever. He says that he found the name Dracula in Whitby Library and thought it meant devil in Romanian, so he used it. So maybe the whole connection with Vlad the Impaler is a load of rubbish and just a coincidence. Anyway, Dracula. The actual novel itself was written in an epistolary style, which basically means that it's made up of loads of different diary entries, so letters, newspaper articles. So it gives you that sense of realism that horror at the time didn't necessarily have, and it allows the reader to follow the story from the POV of more than one character. You could be quite bored of going on about Jonathan Harker and his problems in Dracula's castle, because on the next page we'd be back over in England and we'd be with Mina and Lucy and seeing what's happening with their characters. So the book, it tells the tale of Dracula's wish to purchase a house in London, which sounds tremendously exciting. And honestly, it is. Because he needs a solicitor to help with the sale. This is where Jonathan Harker comes in. So he goes off to Drax Castle in the Carpathian Mountains and vampire-y shenanigans happen. And it all culminates in Dracula setting sail on a boat bound for England. And I won't go into much detail here because the point of this section is not to tell you about the book, but to tell you about Dracula. But let's just say other characters get involved, including another terrific horror character, Van Helsing. So without Dracula, there would be no Van Helsing. So why have I chosen Dracula as my icon of horror? I've got a few reasons. Reason number one, he's totally badass. As horror characters go, he's got some pretty sweet powers. He can shapeshift.
He can speak.
He can can speak a multitude of languages. No. He can shapeshift. He can be big. He can be small. He can be a bat, a wolf, A creepy rolling mist, he could do that as well. Power number 2, he's a vampire. He can turn other people into vampires just by biting them. He can literally create his own legion of followers, or a vampire harem. More on that later.
Oh.
He drinks blood to keep his youthful appearance. Awesome.
Don't we all?
Oh, I try.
I mean,
Just you, Liam. That was a confession there.
Yeah.
If he gets arrested.
Sorry, I've interrupted
It's okay.
your
It's okay.
flow,
Just got my flow.
Jonathan.
My flow of blood. Anyway. He's the king of vampires, which means he can control other vampires. So he turns them into vampires and then he has full control over them. Anyway, back to the vampire harem, which I talked about earlier on. He's often depicted as being basically well fit, right?
well fit.
Yeah. So that, coupled with the fact that he has supernatural control over people, means he's pretty damn irresistible. Reason number 2. He has weaknesses which kind of make sense. Every horror character has a weakness, and Dracula has some of the best weaknesses in horror, a way to be vanquished. So we all know that Dracula needs blood to survive, which makes him desperate. It makes him venture further afield. In the original Dracula novel, sunlight didn't burn or kill him, but it did render his powers useless. So in many newer adaptations, sunlight's deadly. A great plot device in lots of modern vampire and Dracula films. He can't pass over running water unless he's carried, and he can't enter a premises without being invited. So another bit of inspiration from some brilliant scenes in movies and TV. Vampires often use their charms to coerce people into letting them in. Just imagine how many scenes that we'd be without. I'm just thinking of that classic one in What We Do in the Shadows, where he just ends up knocking on the window to get the guy's attention. Religious symbols. They render him incapacitated. Crosses, holy water, garlic. Just think of all the epic tool-up sequences that we wouldn't have if Dracula wasn't a character, where people grab crosses, load blessed bullets, and hang garlic around their necks. Reason number 3, the movies themselves. When you think of Dracula, you think of Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, Gary Oldman, Gerard Butler. Probably not Gerard Butler, because that was...
Yeah, I was going to say, what?
Shite. That was an awful film. Dracula 2000.
Yeah, but Gerard Butler, though.
But Gerard Butler, though, yeah. See,
no.
All I'm saying is proof that Dracula is well fit.
Exactly. There you go.
So, from direct adaptations to modern retellings, original stories featuring the character, Dracula is featured in over 200 movies. So there's
Jeez
really,
Louise.
yeah, it's crazy. There's something for everybody. You've got horror. There's romantic Dracula films. There's extremely gory Dracula films. There's comedy Dracula films. There's even a vampire duck. We all love Count Duckula, right? There is literally something for everybody. And then, of course, there's Nosferatu. That's the illegitimate German cousin of Dracula, once vilified by the Stoker estate, which is another pillar of horror, and one that stands up to this day. And that all kind of brings me neatly to Dracula's legacy. So where would we be without Dracula? What do we owe to him? So without Dracula, there would be no Blade, no Let the Right One In, no Lost Boys, no What We Do in the Shadows, no Vampire's Kiss. So without Dracula, we'd be deprived of so many wonderful films. And frankly, that'd suck.
Oh,
You did
yes.
nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
Done.
Applause, isn't it?
Mic drop.
I was going to say, well done, Jonno. Like, that was beautiful. That
It's
was
all right. I thought I'd go
lovely
down
to hear.
down the pitch route.
My arm. That was like the elevator pitch of Dracula. I love it.
Oh,
So,
I think
yeah.
we should just leave. We should just end the podcast now. I think Jonno's done a good thing.
It's all right. It's all right. I thought he was all right, Dracula. I think he's Not bad.
All right, innit? Not bad.
As far as horror
It's all right.
characters go. But yeah, it blew
well,
my mind.
just to ask, Jonno, what would your favourite kind of incarnation of Dracula be?
I've got I've got a really soft spot for the 1992 Dracula. I don't know why. I just love the look of that film. I just think it's so wonderfully gothic. And I think Gary Oldman does make a fantastic Dracula.
Oh yeah, he's wonderful.
We won't talk as much about Keanu Reeves' English accent, but that's by the by.
Wait, he was English in that film?
Yeah, sorry.
Have you seen the BBC series?
I have, and which
recently,
I really enjoyed until
episode 2.
When it changed. Why do this?
Ruined itself.
Yeah. I will say though, I think he was phenomenal as Dracula.
Excellent.
Oh, he was brilliant.
He was, yeah. I'd like to see a film with is it Clive Bang? I believe
Clive
his name
Bang,
is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see him in a film.
And there was some fantastic scenes in there, some really icky, gory stuff. Just thinking of the one where he kind of literally crawls out of a wolf. I think,
as you do.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
How did you get here? By wolf.
By wolf. Yeah, like literally.
I will say I'm glad that nobody's favourite iteration of Dracula is the one from Van Helsing, where it's not even a Transylvanian accent at that point.
I do have a soft spot for Van Helsing, though. I think it's by the same guy who did The Mummy. And I mean...
Yeah, I think it is.
I have a soft spot for it, but yeah, it is terrible. But that's why I like it.
Yeah.
As Van Helsing.
Oh,
Yes.
Hugh Jackman.
I think it was Kate Beckinsale for me.
Yeah. I'm not
just
gonna
Kate
lie.
Beckinsale.
Basically, anything Kate Beckinsale in a vampire sort of state is fine for me.
Win.
Yeah, it's all gravy. Oh, for God's sake!
You okay, Jonno?
Yeah. Sorry, you can't even see it this month because I've got I've not got my webcam on, but can you hear it on your end again?
There's something
faintly.
1 second, let me just get the microphone ever so slightly closer. Oh, I think it might be. Oh, I think it is. It's time for Cage Corner.
I mean, the drama of your introductions is evolving every episode.
Every episode, it gets more and more melodramatic, and I'm here for it.
This podcast is going to be nominated for an Emmy soon.
I'm not entirely sure if it came through on Discord, but I did make scratching and tapping noises, which will be in the podcast.
I just want to see you in your office on your own, just scratching the microphone.
That's what I was doing.
Imagine Hayley walking in at that point, just going,
"What are you doing?"
It's Cage Corner, mate.
It's Cage Corner, son. Get on the train. I've linked Cage Corner this month.
Oh, look at you. It's almost like you're a professional.
To my horror icon. Because guess where in 2011, whilst promoting Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, Nicolas Cage stayed?
Hazard a guess.
Castle?
It was Castle Dracula. Yeah.
Spot on. Bran Castle near Transylvania. So the idea was that he went there and he wanted to channel the energy and see basically how spooky it was.
Of course he did.
This is kind of sort of classic Cage because we know he bought supposedly the haunted Louisiana mansion in which he wanted to write his next big horror novel, which is still yet to be released because I don't think he ever finished it, unfortunately. But
yeah, he's too busy making bloody films. That's why.
He needs to slow down. 6 a year. Madman. But it leads me on to a question which none of you will be prepared for. But if you could spend a night in one horror movie location, where would you go?
God, that's good.
It's good, isn't it?
That's really
not bad.
good. Yeah. That's, The thing is, though, is like, do we go into it to just legitimately just shit ourselves, or do we just go to be like, oh my God, I'm here?
Well, this is the thing. For me, I would stay in room 1408.
Oh, okay.
Just because.
What, legit with all the spooky shit happening too.
Yeah, you're basically just welcoming hell on yourself there, but okay.
It's banter at this point, isn't it? It'll be fine. Yeah.
I'm going to go like per old school, like horror basic bitch and say the Bates Motel. Because the only scary thing there is Norman Bates, and I could just bitch slap him. Like, just get out. Like, he's the only scary thing there. There's no supernatural ghosts or anything. So, yeah. Also, I've got a massive soft spot for Hitchcock films. So
nice.
That's way to go.
I'm going to go with the Spring Hill Estate, which some people will more recognise as the Scream House.
Good choice. Good choice.
Because I will be going through that way of just walking into every room and going, oh, that's where this happened, or oh, that's where this happened as well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you've still got human killers, so you'll be fine.
Yeah. And I just go into the garage and just point and go, that's where she tried to fit through the door, and just spend laughing.
Yeah, looking back, I feel like I've chosen poorly because I'm the only one that's going to
actually
face a horrific fate. Yeah.
I think a real place that I'd probably like to go, which is from horror films, but also I think in real life is pretty scary, would be the Amityville Horror House.
Yeah,
I feel like some
no
creepy shit.
Not
could go
unless
down
I'm
there.
going with a bag full of like sage and crystals. Like, I'm going nowhere near that shit. Like, no, absolutely not. I am not angering no spirits. I've got no business pissing off any demons. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it could be fun.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure fun's the right word, but it could be something. It could definitely be something.
Straight up possession. Nope.
So I think we've held off for long enough. We're going to have to pass it on to Charlie, who I'm sure is going to surprise us with her choice of horror icon. I've heard it's like, I don't know, like Reddy Brugger or something. Like I don't know how many films this thing's been in. Like a few.
Reddy Brugger.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
I might be wrong.
I'm going to shock you all. I'm going to be doing Chucky.
Please.
I can't tell.
No,
Stop. Don't. Just stop.
No. Stop it. No, of course. You guys, if you've listened to the podcast before, which hopefully you will have done, you will know that I'm a massive fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and Freddy Krueger. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Charlie. I'm obsessed with Nightmare on Elm Street. The reason for said obsession is because of a Channel 4 documentary that was on when I was a teenager. And I hadn't watched Nightmare on Elm Street at this point, but it was a documentary called The 100 Greatest Scary Moments. And it was basically a talking heads thing with like random celebrities talking about their favorite horror films. And up pops this one dude, and he said, the scariest thing about Freddy Krueger is he will get you. It is inevitable. You have to sleep. And that
and Charlie's not slept since.
I have not slept since. Just the idea that was a little light bulb moment in Wes Craven's brain was just amazing. I mean, we talk about like horror films going back to exposing the basic of human fears and, you know, being in your sleep and being peaceful in sleep, where you rest, you do your healing. That's, you know, the time when you're at your most vulnerable. So what do we create? A massive serial killer who's going to kill you in your dreams. Yeah, terrifying. So Nightmare on Elm Street, few little factoids for you, was first released in November of 1984. It was made by New Line Cinemas, which is actually also known as the house that Freddy built, because of its releasing of Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I said, it was directed because of Jason.
On the ground.
It actually, according to the good old Wikipedia, grossed 57 million worldwide when it was released, which is an insane amount for a horror film.
Wow.
And yeah, it also gave us the massive gift that is Johnny Depp as well. So this was one of his first big roles. I mean, if you see the latest Super Freak Media blog post, we don't speak very kindly of him because he is a bit of a shit. But by the by, it gave us Johnny Depp. You can talk about Michael Myers wandering around with his one knife, and you can talk about Jason wandering around with his one machete. But this is the 80s, y'all. We are killing people with 4 knives on a motherfucking glove. Like, why have one of something when you're built in the period of the yuppies and you can kill people with 4 knives? I love it because it's got such a great sense of humor. I think Wes Craven pulls no punches in the franchise. Even in Freddy's initial setup, it's terrifying, but oddly funny as well. And I think it's one of the only films that really successfully treads that line. Certainly of its era, I think it was the first of its kind to successfully tread a line between dark comedy and pure terror. There is something hilarious about Freddy, but also terrifying. We got 5 sequels out of it. Some are absolutely shit and some are brilliant. Wes Craven's New Nightmare is fantastic, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And Dream Children as well. Dream Warriors, not Dream Child. No. Dream Warriors is also an absolutely banging sequel. I think also as well, it tackles, I think Liam, you've spoken about this in your essay on the Super Freak blog about it explores queer identity within the franchise as well. And I think that was another like big turning point for, the 80s during the AIDS epidemic and stuff. It explored queer identities. It explored, things like that. It didn't shy away from it. And I think that's another reason that I love the franchise so much is it has that kind of message behind it. We won't talk about the remake. The less said about that, the better. I mean, it's, for starters, it's not Robert Englund, so it's not Freddy, so it doesn't count. Cycling back to Dan's choice of horror icon, we obviously had Freddy versus Jason, which is a lot of fun, and leaves a supposedly frustrating open end that who actually won? Well, Freddy won. So if anyone disagrees, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you too, actually. I was going to say, were you guys happy with how that film ended if those were your 2 choices?
I must say, when I watched it initially, and spoiler if you've not seen it, but I don't care at this point. When Jason walks out of the lake holding Freddy's head, I was livid. I was like, no, sorry, no. And then obviously you get the cheesy little Freddy wink to the camera, and it's like, yeah, they're in the dream world. Freddy's got this. Like, so yeah, I was happy with the outcome.
Yeah, I think a lot of that film I take almost as a fever dream because there are so many parts where I refuse to admit, starting with one where Jason and Freddy fight in a dream world, and for some very odd reason, Jason is now terrified of water. That thing that he is constantly shown to be coming out of, going into, and attacking from is suddenly his biggest fear. So, in answer to your question, I'm going to go with yes and no. Yes, because my boy Jason in some aspect wins, and no, because I do agree that it was probably in the dream world. So we genuinely won't know.
I also think, like, going back to Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, I think it paved the way for, like, a lot of the final girls of the future. Like, Nancy wasn't some random, I've said this before, you guys know how much I love Nancy and I love Heather Langenkamp, but she wasn't daft. She wasn't some blonde screaming bimbo running away going, oh my God, it's to do. She did her research. She researched Freddy. She knew that she had to stay awake. She researched ways of staying awake. She researched booby traps. And I think it's one of the best third acts of a horror film, hands down, because it's just so fun to watch. And I think coming at it from like an indie filmmaker perspective, like for us guys, there were genius ways in which they made that film cheap, like Pancake Stairs. So from a filmmaker point of view, I think it's brilliant to watch. And yeah, obviously Wes Craven is one of the granddaddies of the horror genre. Like, it's so sad that we've no longer got him with us, because I'm sure he still had a few left in his tank. But not only did he give birth to Freddy, we got Ghostface from him as well. Like, I think it just proves to him, he built up this horror icon, and then he goes on and makes Scream and basically takes the piss out of himself and every other horror filmmaker that built up any of the icons in the slasher genre that we've previously mentioned. So the Halloween franchise, the Friday the 13th franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I think that's something that comes across really well in Nightmare on Elm Street, is Wes Craven's love for the genre, but also his incredible sense of humor. And I think that's what makes the film so good. And I will always have a memory of watching Nightmare on Elm Street in A-level media class. And it was the first moment you see Freddy where, she's in the boiler room and she's running away, and then he pops up behind her and this kid in my class just went, nope, and walked out of the lesson, and we didn't see him for the rest of the lesson.
Never saw them again. Never seen again. That was it.
He was back in the next lesson, but it was just hilarious. And I think that, God, that would have been 2007 that I was doing my A-levels. So to say that a film from the 1980s still scared somebody that much, even though in that time we were looking at the Saw films, we were looking at the Hostel films, we were looking at the body horror films, to say that it still had that much of an impact on someone. Yeah.
I think what's interesting, similar to what Jonno said about Dracula, and I think what's unique about Freddy is the fact that he's bled so much into pop culture that I think as the sequels went on, obviously they did get a bit sillier. I mean, the thing that kind of comes to my mind, although I think part 3 is great, Welcome to Primetime Bitch it's virgin, it's very camp. But like, I mean, he was like on kids' lunchboxes. So we're like literally putting a child killer on kids' lunchboxes that go to school. So it's so weird.
That's just the sense of humor of the film, isn't it? Like, I think that's the dark comedy aspect of like, what merchandise could we possibly make for this film? Let's make children's lunchboxes.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Really?
Yeah.
But the funny
absolutely
thing,
weird.
I think I definitely agree. Like, I, as a child, I'm talking like when I was like 7 to 10, I didn't know who Michael Myers was. I didn't know who Jason was, but I knew Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And just hearing about Freddy Krueger, the fact that he gets you in your dreams, for me, out of those 3, he's always been the scariest one.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, there is something terrifyingly inevitable about Freddy Krueger. The fact that the one thing I will give the remake is it brought in the idea of the micronapping thing, that like you'll get to a point where your body will just go, nope, sleep. And there was the moment where the characters start to micronap in the remake that I thought was brilliant, because how terrifying is that? It's like you're desperately trying to keep yourself awake, and then you keep dotting in and out of this world where Freddy's there and then he's not, because you're back in reality. And so that's the one thing I did enjoy about the remake, but it's just the terrifying inevitability that you will sleep no matter what. Your body will make you sleep. And then ironically, that's the thing that will end up killing you.
I think there's something to be said as well about a horror icon that you can pin down exactly who they are through a piece of, say, clothing. Yeah. Obviously, Jason has the hockey mask, but Freddy's glove will forever remain
one of those horror. It's a horror icon in itself. Just a simple glove with knives at the end of it.
Yeah.
You show that to somebody who probably has never even attempted to watch A Nightmare on Elm Street. They will still know what it relates and who it is from.
And I love the fact that he still. Sorry, Jonno. Go on.
I'm just saying, I think you could go further than that. I think you could you could even just show the silhouette of that.
The fedora.
Don't need detail.
Just
the fedora.
I mean,
the
there's
glove,
so many elements.
Bang.
Yeah.
Freddy.
Yeah. I think with the glove as well, like what I was going to say was the fact that Robert Englund takes a glove to cons and people pay to have the photo, not just with Robert Englund, but like the glove as well. And my friend Rob shared a story of meeting Robert Englund at a con. He's also a massive horror nerd. And we regularly have like just geek out conversations where we'll just talk about horror films. It's epic. And he was saying that he went to a convention and Robert Englund was there and he walked down the queue line because he'd forgotten to bring a glove with him. And he was going, we need to find a glove. We've got to find one. And he saw a girl holding a glove and he went, her, right, you, give me the glove. And he took pictures with her and signed it all for her and everything. But then he was like, can I borrow this for like the whole day, and just held onto a glove and then made sure she got it back at the end of the day because he needed to have pictures with it. And I think, like in terms of having a prop, I don't think like the glove of knives is more iconic. I don't think there's a more iconic weapon for a villain.
I think as well the fact that Robert Englund is synonymous with the role as well. I mean, that maybe is what makes him, that character, stand out from the other icons we've mentioned. He's pretty much from the start played that character. And I mean, aside from the remake, but I mean, even I think in a recent sitcom, he reprised the role like for a Halloween special.
Oldman.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't imagine anyone else doing it. I mean, I know there's talk about them doing another remake and maybe Kevin Bacon taking up the glove. And I mean, yeah, it's exciting to a degree because I would be interested in seeing it. But at the same time, it kind of feeds into that, what we said about Candyman and that hype that you have for yourself. You're always going to be disappointed because it's not who you want.
I think it wouldn't really matter, like if they did do another remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, that I would be disappointed in it. However, Robert Englund said he's got one more Freddy outing in him.
I mean,
as a film.
He totally could do
and
it.
Heather Langenkamp has also said she wouldn't say no to coming back for one more shot as Nancy. So we need to see this happen. Like, I need just one more film.
We know it's possible, and we know that it can prove to be popular. I mean, going back to Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis reprising a role after 40 years, it's unheard of. I mean, I mean, I know we recently had Sarah Connor coming back in Terminator, but I don't know. There's life still in these characters. I know it kind of gets to the point where you don't want to see 80-year-old people like throwing Zimmer frames at each other, but at the same time, we love these original characters. So I don't see a problem with us having Nancy and Freddy return and it be the OG cast. I think it could work.
Yeah.
I think it's nice.
I think if it's handled right, then yeah. No, I was going to say, I think if it's handled right, it's written well, and you like all of the other films that we've mentioned, like in terms of slasher icons, they have their bad sequels. But I think as long as the right person writes it, stays true to Wes Craven's vision of the original Freddy from the first film, and keeps that humor, but keeps the sinister elements, and it's directed well, and they don't try and do anything groundbreaking to change it, then I am all here for it.
I think with Freddy as well, and with Robert Englund, it's nice to see the kind of the reverence that he holds the role in. Like I've read his autobiography, and the way he speaks about the kind of the privilege it was to play Freddy is really refreshing, because I think some people would maybe see it kind of wrongly as, well, I'm just a villain. I'm a slasher villain. But he saw it as a proper role, and you can tell how seriously he took it. And that's great to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think Kane Hodder is similar with the role of Jason. I mean, he's played that the most. But I mean, I will say, I think there was recently a bit of controversy about one of the actors who played Michael Myers in the original film. You know, when he kind of he gets unmasked for like a few seconds. The guy who played him in that basically popped off at this convention saying like how shit the film was, didn't understand why the fans were there. Like, I mean, it was really like disgusting, quite honestly, because no one would know who he was without that. Like, so no offense, just shut up and sit down. Exactly.
It's a really sad thing, I think, when actors turn against their own projects. Like, obviously, you were going to do things that on reflection, maybe you aren't as proud of as you may have hoped you would be, or something wasn't as successful, or whatever. But to turn against the thing that made you famous, I think there's a way of acknowledging that maybe a project you're involved in wasn't the best without tearing it down completely, because even the films that, you know, it's all a level of taste. Like, films that, like, you know, Dan and I disagree on like certain films in the same way that like all of us on the podcast will disagree on certain films. It's a taste level, but what's one person's cup of tea isn't necessarily the other's. And you might think that a project as an actor that you're involved in was absolutely shit, but that film might be really precious to the fans. And the fans, like you said, Liam, are the ones that basically want to see you in more things because they've seen you in one thing and they go, oh, I really like that person as that. Right. Okay. I want to see them in more stuff. Having a fan base is what makes you successful, not only as an actor, but as a, you know, as any kind of creative, a filmmaker, you know, a writer, director, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think to then turn against a fan base, regardless of how shit the film is a really shitty thing to do. And I hate it when I see actors, you know, having that reaction. If you don't like the project anymore and you wish you hadn't have been involved in it, fine. But don't go to a convention to be there for that film and then turn around to you.
Just a complete dick move.
A load of shit.
Dick move.
Just don't do it. Don't do the convention. Well, just don't bother.
There's notoriously, Betsy Palmer wasn't a fan of the original Friday the 13th. She later has come around to it, but I think my funniest piece of like trivia, I think I told you this when we were watching the remake. Yeah, Michael Bay, who if you thought of Michael Bay, you would think of multiple things: explosions, sexy
Megan Fox
draping women over things, and just gratuitous action. He apparently walked out of the premiere of the Friday the 13th remake because he thought that the sex, nudity, and violence was gratuitous.
It was the boob scene at the start, wasn't it? Where she's trying to like in the opening, like
it's kind of the iconography of it all, isn't it? Like, I'm not meaning to be funny. You go into a film like that, you expect teens, you expect pot smoking or weed smoking if you're in the UK, and you expect boobs. Like. Yeah. However unprogressive that is, it's an expectation that we have. So yeah, go away, Michael Bay. Platinum Juice, you can do one.
Go away.
So that rounds out the horror icon segment. I think we've had quite a lot of fun talking about those. I think that's been
just before we completely wrap it up, you'll notice some, if listeners at home, if you actually follow us on social media, that's not shade, but you should. We've launched Killer Stats over on Instagram, and it's kind of profiling our favorite horror icons or serial killers more than anything. So I wanted to pose to you guys individually, who do you think out of like the horror icons? So we're looking at Jason, Michael, Freddy, Leatherface, Chucky, Jigsaw, Ghostface, and Pinhead. They're the key ones I'd say as like the daddies of horror. Who do you think has racked up the most kills? I'll start with you, Charlie.
I think it's Jason. I feel like this is something that I know, and I think it's Jason.
Okay, what about you, Dan?
I'm going to go with Jason as well, possibly with a close second of Chucky, just because of...
Oh, you've made me second guess myself.
Just because of Child's Play 3 with spoiler alert for those who haven't watched Child's Play 3, why? The scene where he swaps the blank bullets for live bullets.
Oh,
I mean, that could account for a lot. I will say my stats are per Wikipedia, so the way that elephants can hatch from eggs on that website, there may be some discrepancies, but it's a valid point, Dan.
SuperfreakMedia t-shirt with that quote on Blooper.
Elephants from eggs.
Liam Banks. That's what he wants.
Mic drop. Jonno, what about you? What would you say?
So, see, I was going to say Jason, but I think just for being different,
devil's advocate.
I'm gonna go with Jigsaw, just because I reckon he bumps off a good 4 or 5 a film.
Okay, now
technically, does Jigsaw kill them?
Technically, they kill themselves. Go home.
Michael Bay, is that you?
God off.
Well, what I'll reveal is, personally, I was quite surprised at this. The person who's got the least amount of kills out of all of these, and I've also kind of totted up the average kills per film because of the amount that they have as well. But the person who has the least amount of kills is Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I find kind of insane. But then when you think about it, Toby Hooper made it and wanted it to be PG initially. I don't know. I think the title is the scary thing. I don't know. He was a crazy dude. But there's only 34 kills in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and there's 8 films in that series. So that means we have an average of 4.25 kills a film, which, when you think about it, I don't think is that much at all. Overall, I don't think 4 kills or so a film. I don't think's a lot.
That's in the intro to some of the films we've been talking about, just the first section.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
That's really low. I'm genuinely thinking is that kills in the film in total or just by Leatherface?
I think that's the kills in the film. If I've looked at these stats right, this is the kills in the film, but pretty much he's responsible for the majority. So we'll give him a break. The maximum that they had was 7 there was in 2 films, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning in 2006 and Texas Chainsaw 3D in 2013, which we hate that film. But I mean, even that 7 kills, I suppose 7's a decent number. We can get on board with that. Jonno, you said Jigsaw, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to reveal that you are wrong. It's not Jigsaw. Jigsaw has 91 kills over a number of 8 films.
I'll take it.
So his average is a lot higher. He's 11.37 per film. But 91,
okay, I'll
take
it.
It's a decent stab at it. The most kills he's had is 22 in one film, and that was in Saw 3D back in 2010.
Oh, great fun.
So you're wrong. Sorry.
Sweet.
Right, Dan, you said Chucky. Again, yes. I'm going to reveal that you're wrong on this one. Chucky's actually got less kills than Jigsaw. He's got only 74 kills.
Oh.
74.
Oh.
Again, 8 seems to be the lucky number. We've got over 8 films, so his average is 9.25 per film. That isn't taken into account, I don't believe, the 2019 film, the one that isn't technically really Chucky.
Not good,
yeah,
so it doesn't count. It's not Brad Dourif, so it doesn't count.
Well, the most amount of kills he's had is 15, and that was in The Seed of Chucky in 2004. So,
dear Lord.
Yeah. I recently, I don't know why I did this. I watched Bride of Chucky the other day. And I mean, I absolutely hate Katherine Heigl. Forgot she was in that film. So just had a bad time. But I will say it was very, very fun. The amount of homages in that film is good.
Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky is god awful.
Colton Kerr. Those that underrated, I will
gave up.
I will stand by that.
curse I give you, Colt. He kind of looks like he has a bad weave at some points. I can't get past it. The hairstyle, it's a thing. But Charlie, you went with Jason, and I can reveal that you are correct. Jason has the most amount of kills. He clocks in 157, which is insane. He's had 12 films, including obviously his most recent appearance, which was the 2009 remake. And over those 12 films, his average, which is great, comes out at 13.08, which I think is kind of special.
Satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Satisfying average. I love that.
Although,
where's Freddie on the list?
I'll get to Freddie. Don't you? You're going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised. I will say, although we have mixed feelings on it, his most amount of kills actually came with Jason X in 2001, where he killed 21 people in that film, which again, mental.
So, individual films wise, Jigsaw, just saying, 22.
Jigsaw's, yeah, pulled ahead. I think Jigsaw actually.
Suicides.
Actually,
you're right, Jonno.
Point, he's dead at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Valid. But Jigsaw does have the most kills per film. I mean, we've got Halloween Kills on the way, which I'm hoping is going to just take the crown. Leave you guys all in the dust.
Just by the trailer, like the scene with the firefighters is going to be like.
I think there's like 18 bodies just in that scene. Yeah. So Freddie, you're going to be surprised. Freddie clocks in.
It's going to be low, isn't it?
Freddie clocks in. I think he's second to last looking at this. No, Scream's second to last. I do apologize. He's got 42. 42. That's over 9 films in the series, obviously including the remake. But his average only comes out at 4.67 per film. So we're similar to Leatherface.
The amount of characters, like the main characters that you focus on in each Nightmare on Elm Street film, like what was it, 4.6?
4.67.
4.67. That's
I think you'll find.
I don't think you'll find it was 4.67. That works out at about right.
Well,
I'm just thinking of
the most amount of kills he had was 10 in one film, and that was Nightmare on Elm Street 2: Freddy's Revenge back in 1986. Yeah. So, I mean, there is that whole pool party scene where he kind of gets a bit knife happy, but I guess I was surprised. I thought Freddy would be higher. Michael, I've got to talk about Michael, the main man himself. He's actually second on the list. He's got 121 over 11 films. So his average is a square 11 kills per movie, which is equally satisfying. The most amount of kills he had.
One of my favorite. It's the bit with Bob where he just stabs him into the wall. Like, yes. I don't know why. It always, like, out of all horror films, that's one death that just makes me go, oh, every time I watch it. Like,
I mean, I remember the first time I saw that scene and just absolutely crapped myself when he came out of that cupboard. And I was just like, okay. And now every time I open a cupboard, I think there's going to be a Michael in there or something. But the most amount of kills he's clocked up was in the Rob Zombie remake in 2007, and that was 18. So please, God, let Halloween Kills overtake this so we don't have to mention it again.
Do it in the first half and we'll all be happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there you go. We'll be revealing more stats on the Instagram page, Killer by Killer, as the weeks go on.
Look, plug.
Yeah, follow us on social media if you want to know your horror shiz.
Best plug of the podcast history, Liam. Well done.
Plug.
Plug. Talking about plugging things. I hear you've got a... Oi.
Excuse me. Weird segue.
Disgusting. I hear you've got another foreign bodies for us this month.
Yes, I do indeed. Thanks, Jonno. So, I kind of tried to keep the vibe similar to what we've been discussing. Obviously, it's primarily been slashers, although Jonno decided to go with Dracula like an absolute melon. But this month,
Whoa.
I have recommended a film that is available on Netflix. It's called Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, and it's a Polish language horror film. It's directed by Bartosz Kowalski, and the crew promoted it as the first Polish slasher film. Okay, so essentially the film follows a group of tech-dependent teens as they go on a camp that is designed to make them go offline, switch off, get away from the world. As we follow these characters, we then learn that each of these kids has ultimately been sent to this camp for different reasons, and pretty much all of them are then there against their own will. Now, the offline camp setting provides us with a really interesting explanation as to why there are no mobile phones or means of contacting the police when shit starts to hit the fan. I think that's something that obviously we see in like slasher films these days. Things could be explained away quite easily with cell phones being a thing. But they explain it quite nicely with this. It also then means that the film's tone switches to one that's quite similar to that of the old 80s slasher films that we love, which this film, I will say, is blatantly looking to homage. Now, the film is filled with the archetypal characters of these classic horror movies. So we've grown to expect, obviously, these sorts of characters through the years, but I think the film does something really quite unique with it. It updates these characters and brings them into the 21st century. So we've got the dumb blonde who's an influencer. The nerd is now a professional gamer. And the reasons that these characters are the way they are links back to why this group have had to step away from technology in the first place. Now, the film really does make you care about the characters. And I think the fact that you like these guys so much makes it all the more impactful when the body count starts to eventually rise. I will say that this film is in no way that original. It doesn't set out to reinvent the wheel. Although inventive, I think a die-hard horror fan might be able to see some of the plot points and even some of the kills that have been lifted straight from other films. So ultimately, I'd suggest going into this just wanting to have a good time and maybe see something that you're familiar with. The film then builds to a climax and a reveal that is truly out of this world, hint, hint. And I'm sure as of recording this, there is a sequel that has been confirmed and I believe might even be released as early as next month, so October. So I definitely suggest checking this out. Belt yourself in for an absolutely bonkers ride. You will enjoy it.
Awesome. Cheers, Liam. And that's Bush. And,
yeah, boy.
That's on Netflix. Am I right?
It is indeed, yeah. I mean, have any of you guys checked it out already, or?
No, I've been audiobooks, mate.
All right, Rich. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I will say, I saw that it was out. I think it came out like in the middle of lockdown. And there's been a few kind of gems that have slipped under the radar on Netflix. There's that. I think there's another one called Classic Horror Story as well, which has recently come out. And it's nice to see these like European films having a take on like the Western kind of iconic like slashers and stuff that we know and love. And I think that links back to episodes where we've discussed like remakes in general, where they've been adapted from like Japanese cinema or whatever. It's nice to see it happen the other way around. Yeah. Which is, it's interesting.
Sweet. So that sort of brings us full circle. We've come to the end of the podcast this month, and I think it's probably been one of my favourite episodes to record. We've all had a lot of things to say. I just want to point our lovely listeners in the direction of another podcast, They're Queer, which the first episode came out earlier this month. Liam, when's episode 2 out?
So this one, the first episode drops on the 21st of September, and it's the 21st of each month. So if you like vampires, which you clearly do, Jonno, you probably want to check out that first episode, because we get quite down and dirty about the Fright Night film. And we mentioned the remake a little bit.
Sweet. I'm there for it. I'm 100% there for it. As usual, if you like our post on Instagram, you will be entered into the competition to win some Super Freak Media goodies. And just a heads up, I think this will be potentially our last competition for a little while. So if you want to enter the competition, now's the time to do it. So thank you very much to my guests this month. We've had Daniel Poppet.
Thank you very much.
Liam Banks.
I'm tempted to say hello again, but thank you very much.
Thanks,
It's
Liam.
been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you very much. And Charlie Clark.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
It has
Big
been.
shout out to you as well, Jonno. Like
Oh,
Yeah.
that Dracula bit was some sweet stuff right there.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do
Yeah,
try
nicely done.
every now and then.
Hey,
So
I've really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it's been good.
it has been good. So all that's left to say is keep it creepy and see you all on the other side.
I hate that. Like, the sign-off's never got any easier, has it? Can you remember
No.
when we just used to cram in Jonno's living room? We'd just sit there and stare at each other.
And then we just go,
Yeah.
oh, we suck.
Awkward.
God, that was
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Like,
Ah. You've been listening to a podcast on the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. To show your support, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can find us on social media in the links in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening.